Mexico, aka North American giant, stretches across a vast 1.97 million square kilometer, making it the 30th largest country globally and the third largest in Latin America. In terms of economic, Mexico's 50th largest economy in the world, heavily reliant on trade, particularly with its NAFTA partner, the United States. Mexico's cultural richness, stunning natural beauty, and historical sites attract millions of tourists annually, boosting the service sector. Last but not least, the currency of Mexico is Mexican peso.
Next is the theoretical literature. According to Toni Morrison, February 2018, the currency exchange of a country tend to suffer from the differences between the inflation of the trade countries. Besides, referring to the theory of competition by Milberg and Anwashe, it was stated that the international competitiveness determines the currency exchange rate of a country. It was measured by the production cost of a countries in their tradable sectors and money flows. The last one is based on the studies by Solimano 1986, presents that the effect of devaluation or currency exchange rate of a country was seen to happen due to the changes in trade sectors. Now, let's look at the factors that affecting the currency exchange in Mexico. The first factor is import. As pointed by the arrow on the graph, we can see that the peak level of the imports in Mexico was in 2018 with a value of 517.2 billion US dollar, while the lowest level of the import in Mexico was in 1990 with a value of 51.77 billion US dollar. Based on the graph, we can see that the value of imports in Mexico rose continuously from 1990 to 2020, with only few years of falls in the level of imports in these 3 decades. It shows the worsened condition of exchange rate in the Mexico, as the rise in level of imports give negative impacts rather than positive toward the currency exchange of a country.
Based on the export graph, the lowest levels of exports in 1990 and the highest level of exports in 2019. According to the article web that I found stated that Mexico's exports have not increased, and it proven by the economics textbook prediction on this factor. This may be related to the fact that a large share of Mexico's manufacturing uses imported goods as production inputs. The United States growth has been low and other currencies have depreciated along with the peso, making Mexico comparatively less attractive.
The next factor that affecting exchange rate of Mexico is inflation. As we can see in the graph, from 1990 to 2020, the highest exchange rate is in 1995, which is 35%, and the lowest is in 2015, which is 2.72%. The main reason why inflation high in 1995 is due to the collapse of the Mexican peso in December 1994. As a result, the inflation increased from 1 digit to more than 50%, and the nominal interest rate almost reached 100%.
Deposit interest rate. The exchange rate between the Mexican peso and the US dollar is influenced by various factors, including interest rate. According to WDI data, the interest rate of Mexico averaged 8.48%. The data reached an all-time high of 39.82% in 1995 and a record low of 0.59% in 2015. The interest rate set by the Bank of Mexico is one of the factors that can influence the exchange rate. As of September 2016, Mexico Central Bank decided to raise its interest rate by 50 basis points to stabilize the peso.
Next, let's move to the multiple regression. The first one is the model summary. The value of R square is 89%, which means that 89% of the exchange rate in Mexico is explained by the imports and exports of goods and services, inflation rate, and deposits interest rates. While for the adjusted R square, the value is 88%. This explains that 88% of the difference in exchange rate availability. The independent variable explains the dependent variable.
The analysis of variance table shows that there is a statistically significant difference between of the means, the import variable for the different levels of the exchange variable. This is indicated by the p-value, which is less than 0.001. The F statistic is also very large, which is 53.528, which further supports the conclusion that there is a significant difference between the means.
Next is the coefficients. According to the statistic, the inflation and the exports of Mexico shows a positive value, which means that these two variables have positive significance effects on the exchange rate in Mexico. Therefore, we reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis. However, as for the interest and the imports of Mexico, the values were negative, proving the insignificant effects toward the exchange rate of Mexico. Hence, the null hypothesis is accepted.
Pearson correlation coefficient represent the direction of the relationship. Strength of the relationship between variables that falls within the standardized range of -1 to +1. According to the table, a positive linear relationship exists between interest and inflation, import and export. The Pearson correlation coefficient for these pairs are interest and inflation 0.942, import and export 0.998. In this graph, factors values are graphed on the x-axis and exchange rate is graphed on the y-axis. Each data point consists of 4 values for x and 1 value for y. Point fall close to the line, which indicates that there is a strong linear relationship between the variables. The relationship is positive because as one variable increases, the other variable also increases.
As a conclusion, this study analysed the factors affecting exchange rate in Mexico, which has an impact on the import and export of goods and services, inflations, and deposit interest rate. According to the multiple regression test, we found that it demonstrates a significant positive impact on the exchange rate for both inflation rate and exports of goods and services. Therefore, we can conclude that the pledge of the exchange rate to the US dollar has not been appropriate regime to the Mexico. In fact, it was found to have a negative impact on Mexico.